WWE in 2019 is considered one of the worst years the company had ever went through. Terrible matches and forgettable feuds were probably the reason why you've blocked 2019 WWE out of your memory. So I'm here to remind you. So here are 10 reasons why 2019 WWE was as bad as it could possibly get. Number 10, lackluster debuts and pushes from various superstars. Now starting with the man on your screen, EC3's main roster debut was highly anticipated due to his charisma and success in NXT and TNA/Impact. However, from the beginning of his introduction to the main roster, they gave him no time to use the microphone and gave him mediocre squash matches to work with. He was seen with a red Solo Cup backstage not too long after this and chasing around R-Truth for the 24/7 title, and that was going to be the end of EC3's WWE run. But it wouldn't just be him, as Lars Sullivan was another example of somebody who flopped on the main roster. I mean, nobody really got behind him in general, and then a resurfacing of some very controversial statements came up, and WWE was done with Lars Sullivan pretty fast. One of the most dominant teams in NXT, the Viking Raiders, came to the main roster, and WWE showed they had no plans for them. And there were so many other examples, including guys like Ricochet, who still hasn't reached the heights that he was in NXT on the main roster. He's been very solid in the mid-card, but I feel like he deserves at least one main title shot. And then Aleister Black literally left the company, became Malachi Black in AEW, hopefully making a return at some point soon, and hopefully WWE has better plans for him than sticking him in a room and having him ask people to knock on his door. Number 9, the mishandling of the inaugural WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. It was said that Sasha Banks and Bayley were known to have been pushing WWE to create a Women's Tag Team Championship and division, so they were selected to be the first ever Women's Tag Team Champions after winning an Elimination Chamber. However, their title reign would only last 49 days, as they would drop into a fatal 4-way tag match at WrestleMania to the Iconics. Now this would spell doom, not because the Iconics were bad, they were great. It was just the fact that WWE clearly didn't know how to book the women's tag team division, as it would be hard to create any storylines with anybody with the tag titles flip-flopping so frequently. Speaking of misusing tag teams, at number 8, the misuse of the Revival. Despite being one of the most talented tag teams in WWE, Dash Wilder and Scott Dawson, aka The Revival, were often subjected to embarrassing and stupid storylines. One of the most notable segments was where they were humiliated by Jimmy and Jay Uso with this specific product called Usi Hot, which had them dragging certain body parts across the ring to itch their areas. And honestly, man, this is just the most Vince McMahon finds this funny thing I've ever seen. Number 7, the insane overexposure of Shane McMahon. I'm just gonna put this into perspective for you before I dive into it. Shane McMahon pinned Roman Reigns, the self-proclaimed best in the world, and please, I don't care about the stupid tournament they came up with. He is not the best in the world. He is far from it. He put himself in there and he just won matches because he's a McMahon. But overall, the self-proclaimed best in the world took up way too much screen time in the year of 2019, constantly pushing this heel agenda that he was the best in the world. And like I said, he literally pinned Roman Reigns. He also beat The Miz, two guys that are way out of his league as a professional wrestler. The only time I actually enjoyed Shane McMahon on TV was when Kevin Owens was beating him up and calling him out pretty much every week, saying, "You don't need screen time. There are so many people that deserve it more than you." So this made me love Kevin Owens way more, and honestly, yeah, he's one of my favorites to this day because of being the anti-hero in this feud that we needed. Number 6, the humiliation of Rusev and the stupidity of the love triangle between him, Lana, and Bobby Lashley. From the beginning, the storyline was met with overwhelmingly negative reactions from the fans. The live crowds often booed these segments heavily, and there was significant backlash on social media, both Bobby Lashley and Lana discussing the amount of negative reception they got from fans on social media about this. And honestly, Bobby Lashley had talked an extent of time about how uncomfortable he was when first being told about this. He didn't understand the magnitude of it. It was pretty much the handling of Rusev that I think everybody was really against. I don't know, but to me it always felt like Vince McMahon or WWE at the time was just punishing Rusev for getting over with Rusev Day. Like, how dare you get over without our permission? So here's an angle where you're going to watch your wife kiss another man and constantly see it every week. Number 5, the wildcard rule.
I'm a genius!
In what was a desperate attempt to improve ratings, Vince McMahon introduced the wildcard rule, allowing certain superstars to appear on both Raw and SmackDown. So I guess it was 3 superstars from SmackDown could show up on Raw and 3 superstars from Raw could show up on SmackDown. But this move blurred the lines of the brand split / superstar shakeup, leading to repetitive matches and so much confusion amongst fans. We really never knew who was on what show, and it was just very confusing. Overall, I think WWE has struggled with the concept of a brand split for a very long time, so let's hope the new one works out well. Number 4, the absolute worst ending to a Money in the Bank match I've ever seen, Brock Lesnar winning the Money in the Bank. A rumor around this time was that Mustafa Ali was supposed to get the treatment that Kofi Kingston did during his Kofi Mania stretch. However, an injury led to Kofi Kingston replacing him in what would have been the storyline. More to come on Kofi Mania after this. And just as it felt like WWE was going to give Mustafa Ali his due and allow him to win the Money in the Bank, Brock Lesnar's music hits, he comes out, pushes Mustafa Ali off of the ladder, and wins the Money in the Bank despite not being in the match, never being announced for the show or the match. And yeah, Brock Lesnar won the Money in the Bank basically for no reason. To keep it short, Brock Lesnar did not need the Money in the Bank. He would just show up and get title shots as it is. So getting the Money in the Bank and giving it to Brock Lesnar here just felt like WWE's lazy excuse of booking the Money in the Bank on somebody that they could guarantee was going to get over with the crowd, whether it was negatively or positively. They gave the Money in the Bank to Brock instead of somebody who really needed this to help get them a push. Now, yes, seeing Brock pretend it's a boombox, having it to his ear, dancing around was hilarious for a decent amount of time, but it just, once again, it didn't need it, which is going to lead me to my number 3, the misuse and poor handling of Kofi Kingston post Kofi Mania. What was an unbelievable and surreal moment watching Kofi Kingston win the WWE Championship at WrestleMania was a moment I will never forget, given the fact that I was in the crowd for this. While it is extremely difficult to book a babyface champion because the best way to book is have the babyface going after the championship because they could be built as an underdog, it felt like WWE really dropped the ball with this title reign. Some of his feuds just kind of felt bleh, like the one against Dolph Ziggler I felt like kind of flopped. And I felt like the build-up to Kofi Kingston versus Randy Orton could have been so much better given the fact that, yes, Randy Orton in a way stalled Kofi Kingston's push a while ago, and it felt like we could have built this up to be a much bigger grudge match and feud, but I don't know, it kind of felt like everything felt flat. And I think part of that is because WWE didn't view Kofi Kingston as the top of the line champion that he could have potentially been. I think they viewed him as a mid-card guy who was just being given this quick and short title run just to appease the crowd, and yeah, they didn't book him like this dominant champion he should be. And the way it ended infuriated us WWE fans more than ever, as Brock Lesnar would come out and just hit an F5 on Kofi Kingston and beat him in about 9 seconds. Like I said before, Brock Lesnar would just come out and get title matches as it was, so it just made no sense to me to give him the Money in the Bank. But anyways, Brock Lesnar beat Kofi Kingston in about 9 seconds, and honestly, it felt like WWE didn't even care about this because what they really wanted was to focus on the debut of Cain Velasquez. So yes, Kofi Kingston would be overshadowed here by Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar, and let's not forget that right after this, Kofi goes back to the mid-card scene, and we basically don't ever talk about his WWE Championship reign ever now. You deserve the world, my glorious king. Number 2, the worst Hell in a Cell match ever between Seth Rollins and The Fiend Bray Wyatt. The destroying of character work, the spamming of finishers, the no contest finish in a Hell in a Cell match. This match was just terrible in every possible way. The creative genius that was Bray Wyatt was amazing at telling stories and getting you invested in everything that was going on with his WWE character. And we finally got to see the development of the character of The Fiend. But it overall felt like we should not have pushed him into a world title match against Seth Rollins as early as we did. WWE booked themselves into a corner with this one because they did not want to take the title off Rollins this fast, and at the same time, they didn't want The Fiend to lose one of his first big high-profile matches and feuds, so they needed to find a way to have the match end in a disqualification. Well, maybe picking a Hell in a Cell match where there is no disqualification was a bad idea here. It did irreparable damage on the character that was The Fiend Bray Wyatt by having him lose in a no contest where he basically just got abused the entire time, and Seth Rollins was immediately turned on by the crowd and he no longer could be the babyface champion that he was. Let's also not forget the terrible red lighting that they put in these matches. It just made no sense. The fans were so upset they were chanting for a refund and also chanting AEW in the crowd. The WWE's poor booking of The Fiend wouldn't end here, but this would just be the beginning of what I felt like was such a missed opportunity in the handling of this character. It's not number one, and that's because number one, The Undertaker versus Goldberg match. What could have been a dream match back in the day should have absolutely never happened with both men in their 50s, but when WWE went to Saudi Arabia for Super Showdown, they booked the match of Goldberg versus The Undertaker. And if you just look at this image right here, you could immediately tell just why it was this bad. Prior to the match even starting, Goldberg knocked himself out backstage when he did his typical headbang against the door or the wall thing to hype himself up before the match. He legitimately knocked himself out, and when he got to the ring, he dropped The Undertaker on his head and almost made him a literal dead man. And you could tell just by the look on the face of The Undertaker how disappointed he was in this match, how disappointed he was at Goldberg for coming out here and basically dropping him on his head. Overall, this was painful for WWE fans to watch because The Undertaker and Goldberg were both legends in their own right, and they still are, but it was just really, really painful to watch, and it's something I wish we could just vanish from our memories. But unfortunately, the memory will never go away. Oh, and an honorable mention to WWE making Chad Gable Shorty G, okay? We get it, Vince. He's small, and that's funny to you. He's small. I can't stand this here in WWE. So let me know what you all thought of my list in the comments down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.